Yo, on this episode of kpopRC, we're doing professional development. What are we doing today?
We're making practical sound effects.
Let's make a blow-off valve.
I think we're also gonna find out who wins those seats in this episode, so, you know, could be you. Leave me a comment below. I might send you some Recaro racing seats. I might send you some, so leave me a comment below.
Yo, welcome to kpopRC, the channel where I make sick videos of scale models. Pretty much anything that's got a remote. So, don't forget to sub up for giveaways and sick-ass RC content. Sometimes there's fire.
Let's talk about making a blow-off valve. Do you think we can build a blow-off valve?
まずはピンなしです。
Blow-off valves. Blow-off valves.
All right, what is a blow-off valve? A blow-off valve is a valve that depressurizes the intake side of a forced induction setup. What this does is it stops the air that is rushing into the engine from backing through the turbo when the throttle plate closes. The throttle plate closes when you take your foot off the gas. When that happens, the intake plenum after the throttle body is in vacuum. That's because your throttle plate closes and now the engine is pulling air, not being force-fed air. Where is all that forced-fed air going? Well, it's going right out the blow-off valve. That's where you get the psh sound. Those kinds of sounds.
But you're nailing the sounds.
Those sounds come from that valve. Always happens when that throttle plate closes. So the timing for a blow-off valve is super crucial to be realistic. It can't happen when you're on throttle. So what this particular blow-off valve has to be pretty smart. It has to understand that when I give her the throttle, give her the jam.
It was fully sick, dude.
And I'm holding that jam, and if I let go of that jam, that's when that blow-off valve has to happen. Not on the up of the RPM. That's not when it happens. So we need a microcontroller that has some kind of if statement that would kick my servo open and open a valve that would then let air out and then close that valve at the right time. That would be how we make it realistic and actually make it sound like a real blow-off valve.
I'm gonna do car sounds for you today.
Car sounds.
Yeah.
And before any of you dudes tell me to go with like one of those electric speaker sound effects kit, that's not what we're doing.
Let's see you go. Go for goal, buddy.
We're building practical sound effects. We want this to sound as realistic as possible, and I don't want it to sound like a looping sound effect, and I don't want it to sound like some kid at the back of the bus blaring some shitty tune through a 1-inch speaker. Like, I don't want to sound like a tin can. I don't want to sound like a little tiny thing. It needs to have some kind of like resemblance of reality, and that's what we're going for. So stick with me. I've got a few ideas. Let me know in the comments below if you think those ideas are whack.
Pretty embarrassing.
Or if you have any better ideas, because like, hive mind it, man. You guys have good ideas too, so let me know. All right, first thing we have our CO2 canister. Another thing is here I have my mechanical valve. This is a spinning mechanical valve. I have to spin this red knob here to open and close the valve. It doesn't have to move much, but it definitely needs a lot of power to close. So that's another thing I have to worry about. I don't even know how many blow-off valve cycles I'll get out of one of these cartridges, but I'm hoping like a 10-minute, maybe a battery pack of drifting would be worth it. These are pretty cheap. I think they're like $1, maybe $2 for a CO2 cartridge. The first thing I'm gonna do is I gotta figure out if this needs to be reduced. We may need to create some kind of gear reduction. We may need to have the the servo spin more times than this valve. So that way we get more distance rotation here to close this valve with more fine precision, as well as we increase the torque. So that will also give us more power to open and close that valve, which might also be important. This is kind of the idea. What I may end up doing is flip this around like this and then create a larger gear on the valve and a small gear on the servo. Let's proof of concept this thing, shall we? All right. Okay, so put this in. Ready? All right, it definitely makes a psh sound.
Dude, you don't have to do the sound. It already does that.
We still haven't talked about how to make it sound like there's more volume. If we trumpet this, somehow we can shape the sound. So I'm gonna worry about that later, but that kind of sounds great. Proof of concept totally worked. We are gonna need more torque. I think I gotta build a gear and I'm gonna stack them. Okay, so that's the next step. All right, so I basically have to copy this shape. It does great. Oh my God, I love this machine. All right, let's talk about this. All right, so this is cool. This works. It works. It's a valve. It takes about maybe 1/8 of a turn to pop open the valve. I'm assuming it's some kind of like worm gear here. And this valve pushes a ton of air through this pipe. So the first problem I'm seeing is that I'm using way too much air every time I open this valve. I need to restrict it. I need it so that the air, I'm not bleeding a ton of air every time I open the valve. Another thing is, what makes a blow-off valve sound like a blow-off valve is the fact that there's a big compressor that's just blowing air through the system at all times. So you're getting this whoosh of air, and it's just a lot of volume of air, and it just continues for quite some time. So that's not what this is giving me. This is giving me a very like nitrous purge sound, which makes sense because that's basically what a nitrous purge does. Is it just like burps the solenoid valve, make sure that the system is primed and has gas right at the valve. So that's basically what this, which is cool. Like if this just becomes like a nitrous sound, then I'm all for it. But I really want it to sound like the choo-choo of a turbo car. So yeah, this is just one of 3 other projects I'm going to do for practical sound for scale drift. The other one I want to do is I want to do the RPM sound, the engine sound, using another motor and another ESC controlled by an Arduino, so that it can fluctuate the RPM to sound like you can go through the gears, or you can hold third gear, you know, like you would be if you were drifting, but when you stop you can go down into second, for example. Something like that would be really cool, because it would be really cool to be able to rolling anti-lag with the blow-off valve and bounce limiter. And it would also be cool as another practical effect to have a backfire kit and just build a proper backfire kit out of a barbecue igniter. That would also be super cool. As you all know, I'm giving away a set of 3D printed seats every episode of kpopRC. Leave me a comment below, make me laugh, and maybe you'll get a set. This episode's winner is Eric Flack Jr. Yo, your seats are on their way. Anyway, until I can order more of these, that's it for this project. But yeah, it seems pretty sweet. Really cool that my new 3D printer can print such amazing gears. I didn't think it could ever do this. This is really cool. This like opens up a whole other world, you know, to be able to do even just slow moving gears. Like this is great. Like I designed these in SketchUp in like 20 minutes.
Also, visit Scalescience's YouTube channel, where we talk a little bit more about 3D printing, RC drift, and this blow-off valve concept. Don't forget to give Scalescience a sub, and also don't forget to tell them K-pop sent you.
Leave me a comment below if you want to win some Recaro seats. There's a 1/10 scale 3D printed Recaros. They would probably look dope in your drift project or your scale crawler, whatever, or even on your dashboard of your car. I don't know. Leave me a comment. I'll pick one that I think is funny or cool, and I'll ship these out. Stay safe. K-pop out.